Hi friends, thanks for connecting with me today. Appreciate you giving me a few minutes of your day. So we are continuing our series, our A to Z series, A to Z, A to Z series, from A to Z, from Genesis to Revelation, and talking about the overarching story of the Bible. And in the previous weeks, we've been talking about the really sad story, it's depressing actually, story of Israel and the downfall of the nation leading up to the end of the Old Testament. So we talked about kind of a roughly 350 year period from after King David and Solomon, his son, to a series of bad kings. Some were okay, some were pretty good, some were bad, some were just downright horrible kings who led the nation of Israel in a period of moral rot, moral decay, moral decline. And during that period, abuse of power, corruption, exploitation of people who are vulnerable. There was some really, really bad stuff that was going on. And the nation disintegrated to the point of, in 586 BC, 580 plus years before Jesus was born, that the nation of Israel was conquered and the city walls of Jerusalem were torn down, the temple was destroyed, and the people were exiled. And after that happened, when they were conquered by the Babylonian Empire, the people were exiled, and there was a period of 400 years, what we call the intertestamental period, the period of 400 years between the end of the Old Testament and the beginning of the New Testament, right? And in many ways, at least biblically, God went silent. There's no biblical writing in that period of time. But just because there's no biblical writing doesn't mean that there was nothing happening. In 322 BC, so 320 years before Jesus showed up, the Greek Empire, Alexander the Great, conquered Israel, and the Greek rulers sacrificed a pig on the altar and was a great, the abomination of desolation, as they called it. So that was 322. And then in 142, roughly 140 years before Jesus was born, there was a revolt by the Jewish people, and they actually won their freedom from their Greek rulers. They won their freedom. And so for a period of about 70 years, 60, 70 years, the people of Israel actually ruled themselves again. It was like, yay for us, we're not being ruled by a foreign power. And so it's like a breath of fresh air. They're feeling pretty good about themselves. In 142, it was called the Maccabean Revolt. And then the Romans came along and absolutely stamped out, squashed any hope of freedom that the Jewish people had. In 63 BC, roughly 60 years before Jesus was born, there was a great massacre by the Romans of Jewish priests who were serving on the Temple Mount. And on that bloody day, this massacre of Jewish priests, the people of Israel were like at the end of themselves. And I think it's particularly difficult because, for hundreds and hundreds of years, they had been ruled by foreign countries, by foreign world empires. First the Assyrians, and then the Babylonians, and then the Greeks. And they got this breath of fresh air, this breath of freedom during the Maccabean Revolt, and then it was squashed again, right? So we can understand the people of Israel and their tremendous longing, yearning for a political and military Messiah, a king to rise up to deliver them from their captors, right? So we can understand now why the people of Israel would put a lot of emphasis on Isaiah chapter 9, Isaiah's prophecy, when he said, "Nevertheless, that time of darkness and despair will not go on forever. And they're saying, yes, let it be true that darkness and despair will not go on forever. And verse 2, for people who walk in darkness will see a great light. For those who live in a land of deep darkness, a light will shine. So the people are feeling the pain of their situation, and they're yearning, they're longing for the Messiah to come. Can I just pause here before we get to the birth of Jesus? Can I pause here and just make a comment? This seems to be a common theme in the Bible. And the common theme is this, that in order to understand the joy of the birth of the Messiah, we have to feel the pain of these hundreds of years of moral decay and captivity and being sent off to exile. We have to feel the pain of this in order to feel the joy of this, right? It's kind of like the old ABC Wide World of Sports thing. If you're old enough to remember the thrill of victory, the agony of defeat, those two things go together. The thrill of victory is made sweeter by the agony of defeat. And so a few weeks ago we said that in order to understand the joy of the deliverance of the people of Israel, the Passover from slavery in Egypt, in order to feel that joy, we have to feel the pain of slavery, right? And it's the same thing that I say every year when we come around to Easter, that in order to feel the joy of Sunday morning, resurrection, we have to feel the pain of Good Friday and the death, right? The terrible death. So in order to feel the joy of it, we have to also feel the pain and embrace the pain. And isn't that a picture of life, right? That life is full of failures, setbacks, disappointments, pain. Life is full of that stuff. But Jesus shines brightest in the darkness. That pain, the joy of the light of Jesus. Anyways, enough said of that. Okay, so we've talked a lot about, the decline, the 350-year decline, 400 years of the silent years, intertestamental period, and all of the stuff that's going on. And so now, on the dawn of a new day, the people are primed, they're ready, they're waiting for their Messiah. And then it happens, the baby Jesus is born. The Messiah, God himself, takes on flesh, and takes on flesh for the purpose of establishing his kingdom on earth, right? And so it's interesting to see kind of the progressive revelation that God was revealing to different people at different times, just who this little baby was. And, so we have, of course, the revelation to Mary and her cousin Elizabeth, mother of John the Baptist. We have the revelation to Joseph that this baby, you are to call him Jesus. And then when the baby is born, when Jesus is born, we have the revelation to the shepherds and the people around. There's this progressive revelation of who this baby really is. And now we come to Luke chapter 2. It's it started out at least as a fairly normal day on the Temple Mount, that big kind of Temple Mount, that flat built up area that the temple used to sit on. And there are there are a bunch of people that are milling around on that kind of flat surface courtyard kind of area. And one of them was Simeon. And we pick up Simeon's story in Luke 2. Actually, in verse 21, it says, 8 days later, when the baby was circumcised, he was named Jesus, the name given him by the angel before he was conceived. And then it seems like maybe this verse 22 happened right away, but it was actually 32 days later. Verse 22, then it came time for their purification offering as required by the law of Moses, that we know is 40 days after the baby is born, 40 days after the birth of a child. So his parents took him to Jerusalem to present him to the Lord. Okay, now we jump down to verse 25. At that time there was a man in Jerusalem named Simeon. He was righteous and devout and was eagerly waiting for the Messiah to come and rescue Israel. This is a significant statement. The Holy Spirit was upon him and had revealed to him that he would not die until he had seen the Lord's Messiah. That day, the Spirit led him to the temple. Again, significant. The Spirit led him to the temple. So when Mary and Joseph came to present the baby Jesus to the Lord, as the law required, Simeon was there. He took the child in his arms and praised God, saying, "Sovereign Lord, now let your servant die in peace, as you have promised. I have seen your salvation, which you have prepared for all people, not just the Jewish people, for all people. He is a light to reveal God to the nations, not just to the Jewish nation, but all nations. And he is the glory of your people, Israel." And then verse 33, Jesus' parents were amazed at what was being said about him. There's this progressive revelation of their understanding more and more about who this baby is. And then the story goes on in verse 36 to talk about Anna the prophet. Anna, a prophet, was also there in the temple. She was the daughter of Phanuel from the tribe of Asher, and she was very old. Her husband died when they had been married only 7 years. Then she lived as a widow to the age of 84. She never left the temple, but stayed there day and night, worshiping God with fasting and prayer. She came along just as Simeon was talking with Mary and Joseph, and she began praising God. She talked about the child to everyone who had been waiting expectantly for God to rescue Jerusalem. Okay, when we gather on Sunday, if you're able to be with us, I'm going to float the question, just kind of in general, what do you think about this story? What do you think about what it says about Simeon and Anna? What do you think? Any thoughts about this? But let me share a couple things that stand out to me. And the first thing that stands out, and I just want to say this quickly, the first words that Simeon said, or the first word, singular, that Simeon said was Sovereign Lord. Sovereign Lord. If there's one thing, friends, that this series, this A to Z series, Genesis to Revelation story tells us and teaches us, is that God is sovereign. There are a whole bunch of stories about human beings who rise up and kingdoms rise and fall and people do stuff, some good, some bad, and the story seems convoluted sometimes and difficult and painful. But if there's one thing that we learn, especially when we get to the last week of our series in the book of Revelation and heaven and all of that, if there's one thing that we learn, that God is in control of the entire story. God, friends, is sovereign. And I think this is particularly important for us today because, as we watch the news and we just look at the world around us, there's a lot of stuff going on. And there's a lot of stuff that, man, if we allowed ourselves, we could give in to despair at what's happening and what we see on the news. But friends, listen. God is sovereign. Like Simeon said, Sovereign Lord. That word sovereign means that there is nobody on top of, there is nobody above the sovereign ruler, right? They are number one. And God is the sovereign ruler of this story that we find ourselves in. Okay, just want to touch on that quickly. But what I really want to highlight is something that I think is interesting. When the gospel writers like Luke and when biblical writers wrote their words, they did not waste any words. They were very specific and very pointed. There's a reason why they said what they said. And it feels to me like when Luke wrote about Anna especially, he gave a lot of details about her life that seem like Luke, why does it matter? if Anna, if her husband died when they had been married only 7 years? Why does it matter that she lived as a widow to the age of 84? Why does this kind of stuff matter? And even about Simeon, why does it matter, that Simeon, let me just go back and see, that he was eagerly waiting for the Messiah to come and rescue Israel. And the Holy Spirit was on him, and the Holy Spirit revealed to him that he wouldn't die until the Lord's Messiah. These are very personal statements, and I wonder, why did Luke include this stuff in his story, right, if he was not wasting words? And I think that Luke was making a point, and I'm not sure that I really understand the point that Luke was making, but maybe the point is this. These are very personal details, especially about Anna, widowed after only 7 years of marriage. She's 84 years old. She's been waiting for the Messiah. These are very personal details about a very real person. And maybe the point is that these were real people with real stories and real heartache, and they were real people with real stories. And God reveals himself by his Spirit to real people just like you and me, right? And the key thing for me is what I just said, reveals by his Spirit, friends, by his Spirit. It's really significant that in verses 25, 26, 27, it says that Simeon was eagerly waiting for the Messiah to come to rescue Israel. The Holy Spirit was upon him and had revealed to him that he would not die until he had seen the Lord's Messiah. That day, the Spirit led him to the temple. Friends, listen, Simeon, this was not revealed to him by reading in a textbook. This was a revelation of the Spirit, a revelation by the Spirit. It was a divine revelation to Simeon by the Spirit. And this, to me, seems to be the key to understanding this whole Jesus life. We could approach the Jesus life on a very practical human level of, I've decided to join this church. I've decided to, kind of surrender my life to Jesus. And we could approach this whole Jesus life on a very human, practical level. But the secret sauce, friends, the key to the Jesus life is this revelation of the Spirit. Can I just finish by saying something to you? As your pastor, as somebody who loves you and cares about your well-being, I'm speaking directly to those of you who are part of our Reunion Church community. Okay, this is a pastoral word for you. I think it's fantastic how I regularly, let me put it this way. I regularly say to people that our church community is super chill, like casual, comfortable, relaxed. And I love our super chill vibe on Sunday mornings. And I love the super chill vibe of our church community in general. Like we come together, we sit around tables, we eat food together, we laugh together, children running around. We enjoy worship, we enjoy teaching, we have a really great conversation about the topic. We're super chill in our approach, and we've actually kind of redefined what a church community, a community of faith can look like, right? And I love that. I love our super chill vibe, but friends, listen to me. Our super chill vibe is not at the expense of, or it does not mean that we're super chill on Jesus, right? Kind of like, kind of take it or leave it. No, we're super chill in our format, but we pursue Jesus hard in our lives. We pursue hard what it means to be a follower of Jesus. We pursue hard what it means to receive a spiritual revelation from Jesus. This is the key to the success of our lives as followers of Jesus and success of our community, of a community of Jesus followers. Really quickly, my time is up. But really quickly, every year, usually around this time in the summer, I just pause and I reflect back on the previous year and look ahead to the next year. And I always, in my annual planning little paper thing that I use, that I work from, I keep at the forefront of my mind my idea of a vibrant church. So what is it that we're pursuing? What are we moving towards? My idea of a vibrant church. And the first thing that I have on my list is spiritual vitality. People encountering a life-changing relationship with Jesus. And then I have authentic relationships, transparency, and unconditional acceptance. And then I have serving our community in meaningful ways. And then I have diversity, reflection of our community in general, in generational, cultural, and lifestyle differences. And that's how I view a vibrant church. But the first thing, again, the first key to a vibrant church is spiritual vitality. People encountering a life-changing relationship with Jesus. And just like I said about Simeon, that Simeon did not read about the coming Messiah, and this revelation of the Spirit did not come from a textbook. It was the revelation of the Spirit. The Spirit turned the lights on for Simeon. And in the same way, friends, I'm asking for the Holy Spirit to reveal himself. I'm asking for the Holy Spirit to reveal Jesus to you, for the lights to come on your inside, to reveal who Jesus is and his love and his goodness and his power in your life. Okay? I've really gone long today, and kind of sorry, not sorry. I think this was important to talk about. But but thank you for joining me today, and I hope you have a fantastic day.